Let me turn the volume up. Sometimes that helps. Okay, so now there's audio. Great. Okay. I'm going to start over. So we were going to do a PowerPoint this morning. The TV's given us some technical issues, so I'm just going to run through the notes, and I will send everyone a PowerPoint later. So we're going to start with Virginia. This is covering laws and forms changes for Virginia and North Carolina. Virginia recently changed some laws regarding manufactured homes and properties owners association and different resale disclosures and certificates, which don't particularly apply to us. So I'm going to skip down to the agency laws that do apply to us. The General Assembly amended how continuing educations for real estate licenses are allocated. So in the past, we've had to use out of the hours that we have to do continuing education for Virginia, certain hours have to be for certain categories. So now we will only need 11 mandatory credit hours, including 2 hours in agency contracts and legal updates. And then the amount of elective credit hours required is reduced to 5. So now there's no overall increase of credit hours that we would need for continuing education. They've just changed how they want us to allocate what we're actually doing in our continuing education. So that will come into effect for the next full renewal cycle beginning July 1st, 2024. They've also amended the definitions of real estate broker and real estate salesperson so that now it includes wholesaling. So in Virginia, you have to have a license to do any sort of wholesaling in Virginia. Tennessee, it's best practice too anyway, but now Virginia, you have to have a license to do wholesaling there. They're also making reciprocity easier, so maybe in doing that, DPOR will also quicken their pace for processing things as well on our side. I know it normally takes 3 to 4 weeks for them to do anything as it is right now, but they're trying to make things easier, so that's a good thing. So if you are looking to reciprocate your license with Virginia, all you really need to do is send in a copy of your Tennessee license with the PSI application. Fill out the PSI application online, I think you have to do fingerprints and a background check. Then all you need to do is just take the state test, and then you can apply for your license. After that, you probably have some post-licensing or continuing ed, but they're making reciprocity a lot easier. So if you have any questions on reciprocating your license, just let me know. Now they're also changing the real estate service agreement to where you can't have a real estate service agreement for longer than 1 year, which is interesting. So let's say the owner dies while the property is listed and someone else takes over. They're saying you cannot have an original service agreement for longer than 1 year. When would this ever really be used anyway? I'm not quite sure. I think in any case, you would just want a new agreement drawn up anyway. So you can always do a buyer's rep for a year and then do a new one. Like, I don't know why they want to put a year max on it, but they do. So real estate service agreements have to be no longer than 1 year before you would need to sign a new one. They've also made some property management, landlord, and tenant changes, which don't really affect us. And then the main form changes are broker compensation. That has been replaced with the professional services fee and reordered the compensation models. So again, this is all just going into effect because of the NAR settlement. So there's no longer going to be the broker compensation form. Instead, there's going to be the professional services fee and reorder the compensation models on that form. And then there's going to be another form that authorizes to advertise that seller concessions can be added. So because, again, we cannot put commission amounts in the MLS, Virginia is allowing us to use that form to advertise seller concessions that basically would be allowed to give to a buyer so that the buyer could pay for buyer side commissions if they need to, roll it in. So you can advertise however much, the seller is willing to offer in seller concessions for buyer's compensation. I'm going to send out a copy of the PowerPoint, and I'm also going to send out the standard form updates that just gives a summary of what they've done. Those are really the main differences. Everything else, they're just adding language throughout. That's adding fair housing disclosures or notices to buyers for due diligence, or they're changing their languages anytime that it ever says broker compensation. Now they're changing that to professional services fee on all of their forms. They're adding check boxes on the forms when they're describing the fee. And all of this is just to provide clarity throughout negotiations and when presenting an offer. They've updated the buyer brokerage agreement as well to reflect this language. So not a ton of major changes, just really simple responses to the NAR settlement. That's really all I have for Virginia, so I'm going to skip over to North Carolina. And like I said, I will send out a copy of the PowerPoint in case you want to flip through it, but everything else really does not apply to us. Those are the main agency changes on the laws and on contracts, so I'll send both of those out. If you have any questions on the Virginia side, let me know. Okay, so for North Carolina, they've changed 4 different categories. They've changed auction forms, property management forms, commercial, and residential. So we're going to start with auction and just really quickly run through them. Essentially, they've added this disclosure that broker compensation is not fixed by law, it's fully negotiable, and it is set individually by each broker and firm. So it also should be noted that the answer no can be part of any negotiation for any sort of compensation. So an agent or a firm is permitted to determine the value of their services so long as that it is not set, determined, coordinated, or in any way unlawfully affect what a competitor might charge or is charging against price fixing. And the disclosures have added that firms are strongly encouraged to discuss compensation policies and verbiage to make sure that sellers and buyers understand that cooperating compensation is no longer required. I mean, I guess it's never really been required, but the forms are now making that abundantly clear. Property management doesn't really pertain to us. Residential forms, the listing forms, the NAR settlement edit has just added language to make clear that broker compensation is fully negotiable, same thing that auction was talking about, and that there are initial lines now added for the seller to affirm that they understand that cooperating compensation is not required. Same thing on the buyer's form. The buyer is on the buyer's form. It talks about the buyer agent being able to negotiate cooperating compensation, and that the buyer's agent and the buyer can execute North Carolina Form 770 and 710 to show what the agent services are, essentially, that they're not free. And it talks about cooperating compensation agreement. They've changed that from the formerly titled confirmation of compensation. Again, it's been renamed and completely redrafted to just help facilitate agents navigating the MLS rules and the Code of Ethics changes rolling out in July. So this form is going to be one tool to be used to understand form agency agreements. But you want to use Form 770 and 710 along with the cooperating compensation agreement for North Carolina, just to discuss how compensation is going to be allocated at closing. And then the last group of North Carolina form updates is the commercial. It discusses the compensation and commission paragraph, same thing of what I was discussing earlier, and They've also published a video and a document that goes over some of these form changes as well. I've hit the main points, but for North Carolina, they've got a video instead of a PowerPoint and another form. So I'm going to send out all of this information to you in an email. Let me know if you have any questions on the North Carolina side, but it's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of the language, again, is just redrafting to reflect the compensation and the NAR settlement. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you, guys.